already.
He's off the Mufasa. He off the. I can't use him for the fantasy no more because my friend is off. So I just done. I gotta find somebody else. Gotta go back to Lenny Kravitz.
It's like there's a new couple in Hollywood.
Aaron Pierre, Teyana.
Taya Taylor sat frozen in her car, her fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles had turned pale. Her phone kept buzzing on the seat beside her, but she couldn't bring herself to look at it. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her cheeks were still streaked with dried tears. Just a few hours earlier, life had seemed steady, or at least something she could handle. But now, everything felt like it had been ripped out from under her. What shook her most was not just the betrayal itself, but who it came from. Aaron Pierre, the man she thought she could trust. That morning had started like any other. She dropped her daughter off at school, humming softly to the radio, trying to keep her spirits up despite the storm of her divorce still hanging over her. When she pulled into her driveway, she noticed a large envelope stuffed awkwardly in the gate. She assumed it was routine paperwork, maybe something about the divorce. She didn't bother opening it right away. Instead, she made her tea, sat down in the kitchen, and only then tore it open. What she saw inside shattered her. The first lines made her stomach twist, and her chest tightened so hard she could barely breathe. Her eyes blurred as she read them again and again. Aaron had filed for joint custody of her daughter, her little girl who wasn't even his. For a moment, she just sat there stunned, staring at the papers. Then she frantically flipped through page after page, hoping it was some mistake. But it wasn't. It was real. Her heart pounded as she grabbed her phone and called him, straight to voicemail. Again and again the same. Finally, she left a message, her voice cracking. "Aaron, what is this? Why would you do this to us? Please call me." But in her gut, she already knew the truth. This wasn't an accident. He had done it deliberately behind her back, without a single conversation or warning. Taya's thoughts spiraled. She had let this man into her home, into her heart, and worst of all, into her daughter's world. After everything she endured with Aman, the lies, the infidelity, the heartbreak, she promised herself she wouldn't be so open again. Yet Aaron had been different. He came slowly with patience and kindness. He never pushed her, never demanded too much. He said all the right things, and when it came to her daughter, he seemed genuine. She remembered how he tried to braid her daughter's hair, clumsy but sweet. How he stayed up late helping with homework, or sat front row at her school play, cheering louder than anyone. He even brought ice cream when her little girl had rough days. Soon, her daughter started calling him Uncle Aaron, and at first it warmed Taya's heart. She thought maybe she had finally found someone who didn't want to replace her child's father, but simply to support them both. But over time, things shifted. Aaron began questioning her choices. At first, it was small, like what bedtime should be or which school was best. Then it turned into objections, critiques, and subtle challenges to her authority. One moment stood out in her mind now, clearer than ever. He had casually said, "Our little girl is growing up so fast." She froze at the word "our." She laughed it off, asking him what he meant, and he only smiled and kissed her forehead. At the time, she brushed it aside. But now, those words screamed in her memory. As she sat in her car replaying it all, shame and anger washed over her. How could she have missed the signs? How could she have let this happen? Then the news hit the media. Within hours, blogs and gossip sites ran wild with headlines. Actor Aaron Pierre files for custody of Taya Taylor's daughter. Paparazzi swarmed her street, flashing cameras as though her pain was entertainment. She hadn't even had the chance to breathe, and already the world had decided what to think. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mother. "Taya, what's going on? Did you really let this man get close enough to try and take your child?" Her mother asked, her voice heavy with disappointment and fear. Taya couldn't answer. She broke down sobbing, and for the first time, her mother sounded as fragile as she felt. "Baby, you need to fight. Don't let this slide," she urged. And then came the call she dreaded most, Aman. She hadn't spoken to him in weeks, and things were still raw between them. But when he heard, he exploded. "You let another man file for rights to my daughter?" he yelled. "I didn't let anything happen," she snapped back, her voice shaking. He went behind my back. For a moment, silence. Then Amon muttered a curse under his breath. I'm coming over. The last thing Taya wanted was more conflict, yet she knew he had every right to be furious. Sitting there in her car, surrounded by betrayal, judgment, and chaos, one thought kept looping in her mind. How had love, something she once believed in, brought her here? That night wasn't just heavy for Teyana, it was unbearable. This fight wasn't about her pride, or even about Aaron anymore. It was about the one person who mattered most, her child. She sat alone in her living room, the glow from the lamp casting soft shadows on the walls. Her daughter was asleep in the next room, curled up with her favorite blanket, unaware of the chaos swirling around her mother. Teyana looked at her baby's peaceful face earlier when tucking her in, and the ache in her chest nearly broke her. All she had ever wanted was to shield her little girl from pain, to give her a safe home where love was certain and unquestioned. But how could she protect her now, when the threat wasn't outside their walls, but inside their circle of trust? Hours dragged by before Aaron finally responded. But instead of a phone call, instead of even trying to talk, he sent a short text message. We'll let the courts decide. Teyana's hands shook as she read it. For a second, she almost hurled the phone across the room. How could the same man who once wiped her tears, the man who whispered that she was safe in his arms, now speak to her like she was an enemy? She thought back to the very first night she broke down in front of him. She had let her walls crumble, and he held her close, rubbing her back, promising he would never let her face pain alone. And now, here he was, dragging her into a courtroom as if she were unfit, as if she were some obstacle in the way of his plans. The next morning, her lawyer arrived at her door, files stacked under his arm and concern etched into his face. This is going to get ugly, he told her, sitting at her dining table. But we're going to fight, and we're going to win. He doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. His words were meant to reassure, but they didn't soothe her fear. This wasn't only about legal rights. It was about betrayal. Being blindsided by a man she had trusted with her heart, and, more importantly, her daughter's heart. Later that day, Teyana opened Instagram and quietly posted a black and white photo of her holding her daughter's tiny hand. She didn't write a caption. She didn't need one. Within minutes, the comments poured in. Stay strong, Queen. Protect your peace and your baby. He was never the one. But not everyone was kind. Some strangers accused her of being selfish, of keeping a good man away from a child who adored him. Those words pierced deep because they echoed the very fear she couldn't silence. That Aaron believed he was right. That in his mind he wasn't hurting them, he was saving them. While she tried to stay quiet, Aaron seemed to thrive in the spotlight. Paparazzi photographed him leaving his lawyer's office, his face calm, almost smug. Reporters shouted questions, and when asked if he planned to push the custody case all the way, he simply said, "I'll do what's best for the child." Hearing that nearly made Teyana scream. How dare he? How dare he stand in front of cameras and act like she was the reckless one, like she hadn't given every piece of herself to protect her daughter. Meanwhile, at home, her daughter started noticing the change. One night, as Teyana tucked her in, the little girl looked up with wide eyes and asked, "Why are you sad, Mommy?" Teyana froze. How could she explain to a child that someone they trusted was trying to rip their world apart? How do you put that kind of heartbreak into words a child can understand? She kissed her forehead and simply said, "I love you. That's all you need to know." Days blurred into weeks. Court dates were set. Hearings filled the calendar. Friends whispered, chose sides, and some even drifted away. What was once her life became a battlefield where love, loyalty, and law collided. The first mediation meeting came quickly. Teyana walked in with her lawyer at her side, her stomach twisted into knots. Aaron was already seated, his expression blank, his posture confident. He didn't flinch when she entered, didn't even acknowledge the storm he had created. The mediator began with careful words, trying to set a calm tone. But Aaron spoke first, his voice even and detached. "I just want stability for her." That was it. The breaking point. Teyana's composure shattered. Her voice rang through the room, sharp as a slap. She had stability until you blew it up. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the mediator seemed to shrink, wishing he could disappear into the walls. Aaron didn't argue back. He didn't apologize. He only stared at her, his eyes cold, distant, as if he didn't even know her anymore. For the first time, Teyana realized that the man she once thought was her safe place was gone. What remained was a stranger wearing his face, one who believed he had the right to decide the future of her child. And that thought terrified her more than anything. Maybe Aaron didn't even recognize the man he had become. Maybe in his own mind, he was still the same patient, gentle person she first trusted. But whether he realized it or not, the damage was already done, and there was no undoing it. On the drive home, Teyana gripped the steering wheel so tightly it felt like her only anchor to reality. The city lights blurred past her windshield, her vision sharp one second and cloudy the next. Her hands trembled, her heart pounded, but this wasn't fear. She had known fear before. Nights of silence, days of doubt, moments of betrayal. No, this was something else entirely. This was fury stitched together with heartbreak. The kind of rage that builds its own armor after being gaslit for so long you start questioning your own reflection. By the time she pushed open the door to her home, the walls she had tried to keep up crumbled. She dropped her bag to the floor, collapsed onto the couch, and pulled her knees into her chest. The tears came fast and heavy, not a sign of weakness but of release. Each sob carried months of frustration she had buried, months of pretending to be strong when she felt like shattering. Every cry was the scream she had swallowed in front of her daughter. Those moments when she had to stay composed, smile through the ache, and convince her little girl that everything was okay. But tonight felt different. Tonight, something inside her shifted. Instead of hiding from the storm, she turned toward it. Instead of silencing her emotions, she let them roar. Her phone sat on the coffee table, its screen lighting up with notifications she ignored. Slowly, almost instinctively, she picked it up, opened the camera, and pressed record. She stared straight into the lens, not as a celebrity, not as someone trying to gather sympathy or likes, but simply as a woman reclaiming her truth. For too long, her voice had been drowned out by lawyers, by gossip, by whispers that twisted her story into something unrecognizable.